Funsize Show!
I'm here with Lee Brenner, partner and head of design at Funsize, where I also work. Why don't you tell everyone about like what it is that you do?
Short version is I work for you. Primarily, it's basically taking your vision and Natalie's vision for the company and kind of translating that into, the day-to-day of what the design team is doing. I am also, assisting and helping out with marketing and business development, meeting with potential clients, figuring out for a match and if it's the right product to take on, scheduling and resourcing, so making sure that the right designers are on the right projects and making sure that we're matching skill set with designers' goals for their careers and the needs of the client, finding that right Venn diagram to make projects go really well. And then I work with the senior design leaders to put together the design org processes. So like how we do career growth, how we do performance reviews, like how we hire new designers, what are our processes for doing design, how do we run projects, how are our teams structured. So that's like a huge part of that ops related part of being head of design. But I definitely rely on the, delegating that out and giving ownership to the senior design leaders rather than me just trying to do all of that myself. But then I also serve as a senior design director. So on projects, I'll, provide senior design director oversight and guidance for projects and work directly, hands-on with the teams. That's one thing I think I love so much about Funsize that I think is super critical and important and differentiating for us is that all of us are designers here. If you're on the design team, you're a designer. So you're hands-on, how to go in and you're proficient with the tools or the process, so that if you've got a gnarly project that needs a lot of hands-on, you can drop right in and be right there with the individual contributors working on wireframes, working on visual design, working on prototypes. Yeah, I guess the other new one is kind of doing a little bit of cybersecurity and IT lately.
Yeah. You wrote the policy for our cybersecurity thing, which was unexpected. Have you ever had a job where you weren't hands-on with design?
No. As when I transitioned, into the design career, I've never not been hands-on. Yeah, I couldn't imagine not being hands-on. I think it would, my brain would break or something if I couldn't be making something. And that's why, why I think I love Funsize so much is that we're all hands-on. Like when you're on the design team, you know how to do design work and you can function as a designer. We're just at that right size where we don't need people to be managing other people. Like we're a small agency of consultants. And if you're a designer, you need to be able to take care of yourself, because you need to be able to, work with a client and get shit done. So for someone to go up in the ranks and then basically transition into people management here doesn't make a lot of sense, because there's people are adults here and they're super, high functioning and know how to do stuff and get things done. So they just don't need that layer of someone telling them what to do.
How do you make sure that you have time to do that? Because it is easy for things to atrophy if you don't make time for them.
I think I'm pretty good at time management. And I think the one thing that I have been focused on this year in particular is figuring out how to delegate to other people so that I can keep my priorities properly stack ranked. I'm not as hands-on, as I used to be, but I still am in Figma just about every single day, if not every day. And I, still doing, writing code every other day or so. But I think that's all about delegation.
What is the most important thing you think?
Man,
out of all of those.
That's a tough question. I mean, okay, if I have to have a P0, it's keep the business alive. Ultimately, if we don't If we don't have a business, then we don't have anything. If you're in an impossible situation, you have to make an impossible decision. That has to be the P0. Unless you change, what the priorities of the company are. So as head of design, like, I think that is ultimately the thing that's in the back of my mind is how do we make the business successful? Because without that, then you can't pay a design team. Without that P0, you're not thinking about which work should we take versus which work should we not take. How do we stay differentiated? How do we evolve in a market that's bonkers? Like all of those things sort of resolve down to what's the best thing to make the business keep going.
What do you think the most common priority of the role is?
It's also another tough question. I mean, it would be a huge assumption on my part. I guess the one caveat I would have to say is that this is kind of a new role for me, being head of design. And because of the way I entered the industry, I've always felt a little bit like an outsider. So I don't think that I have a lot of visibility into the wider head of design community. It's not like I know a whole bunch of people out there and have like a whole bunch of data points. But I would say it's different for every head of design would be my guess is what their P0 is. Probably some of them are very business focused. Others I would imagine would be all about craft. Like the P0 is, the highest quality design craft. Other ones might be more focused on, it's all about the people, like it's all about having the happiest or most, well-balanced team or something like that. That's my very ill-informed answer to that question.
I mean, you're a fascinating person to me because you have been an engineer, you've been an engineering manager, you have been a design technologist, you have owned your own agency, you have had your own startup. How many years of experience? How long have you been doing this?
I joined Frog in 2005, so
Yeah.
oh my God, 20 years.
How do you even identify? Like, I mean,
I don't anymore. I think it was definitely has been a struggle in my career because when I was, like you said, my degree is in computer science and I started off as a hardcore engineer and realized that was not my thing. And the reason I joined Frog is because I wanted to get back to my creative roots. And that's where I became a design technologist because Frog at the time was trying to spin up an implementation arm. At that time, I struggled with feeling like being accepted into the design community because everybody thought of me as an engineer. And, I don't want to overgeneralize, but designers look at engineers a certain way and engineers tend to look at designers a certain way. So there's just that thing. So I always struggled with that. And I think for the longest part of my career, as I transitioned from engineering to design technology to more design, I've always just struggled to identify as a designer because I never felt like I was a designer compared to all of these other people who were the capital D designer. And you haven't fired me yet, so I guess I'm doing all right.
Since I've known you, I've seen so much of what you do, right? I've seen you do strategic work for clients that gets approved by CEOs of major corporations. I've seen you build games. I've seen you animate artistic pieces. I've seen you do UI design, UX design, research. What is it you can't do? Like, what are you not good at? Do you feel like you need to be good at all these things, or you just happen to be good at all these things?
Maybe in the past it was a little ego driven, where I would see somebody be really good at something, and I would feel maybe a little competitive and be like, oh man, I want to be able to do that. But I genuinely, I really enjoy just a lot of different things, and I just like doing stuff. I like making stuff, and with the way that my brain works, at some level, everything is the same thing. Like writing code is the same thing as doing interaction design or doing visual design or even drawing. Like in my brain, there's like this level of abstraction where no matter what it is that I'm doing, it all kind of funnels up to the same critical thinking process. So I think it's easy to pick stuff up because I'm just kind of taking my own internal problem solving ability and just applying it to a different topic.
Could you highlight some of the things that you've worked on in your past that you're the most proud of?
I can start at this beginning, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to end up with the thing I'm most proud of is here, is being at Funsize and the opportunity that I've been given at Funsize. But when I started off my career, I was probably most proud of like just getting a degree, because I was the first person in my family to get a college education. And then when I joined Frog, like that was my most proud moment, because I never in a million years thought that I could work at a world-class design agency that designed the Apple, IIc, computer. And then I got put on the first commercial touchscreen project, the HP Touch Smart. And I was a nobody. They assigned me to this project, and I ended up writing the animation engine and the UI framework for it, for this thing that, was built by HP and released to millions of people. And I can't remember which Pixar movie had just come out, and they showed the Touch Smart commercial like in the theater.
Wow.
And like that was my most proud moment, because my kids were just like, whoa, you made that.
That's huge.
So it's been, I guess I've just been lucky. Like every moment has been my most proud moment, because then, I went on, my business partner, Brian Romanko, asked me to form Big Big Bomb. Never in a million years thought I could do that, but we did. And it was, so that was a proud moment. Then never thought we would do a startup. And then Hayride got sold. That was a proud moment. But like I said, all of that is great, but and I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart, like this really, in terms of my career, I think is the most proud I've ever felt, or the most accomplished I've ever felt, because I've been challenged working here in ways that I never imagined, and have met such incredibly dedicated and talented people, and get to work with them. I'm done. I feel like I need to retire now because this is good. This is awesome.
What for you is unsettled or unanswered?
Probably a few things. In terms of Funsize as an organization, how do we evolve and stay differentiated in this industry? Because we don't know what the true impact of artificial intelligence is going to be. So that's probably the one in terms of business that keeps me awake at night, is how does Funsize as a company differentiate and evolve? And how do we put our designers in a place where they stay differentiated and competitive in a field of, so many other designers in the industry? Like, what can we give them for their career? It's less of an issue for me because I'm sort of at the end of my career. But so it's not really about me. It's more about what can I do to empower and support the designers and help them to continue to grow and to give new experiences that are relevant to the technology today, so that they can learn how to be the designers that they need to be. So that's one thing that feels, I think, unresolved.
Should we get the hell out of here and go have some fun?
Sounds good.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Are we going? All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Dude, that was a satisfying clink too.
So we're at Vigilante, board game place. When you said you wanted to hang out, you picked games. What is it about games?
I have been a huge nerd and dork my entire life. I grew up wanting to be a comic book artist. I love playing Dungeons and Dragons. I had a very overactive imagination. Just all of this stuff is just very much me. And I actually, my cousin and her husband are huge board gamers that live in Houston. Anytime we have our family get together, he'll bring 40 or 50 games, and we'll just spend hours, all playing these board games together. It's just, I just love it. I play video games. I still play video games to this day. Grew up playing them. I still play them. It's just sort of in my DNA, I guess.
What's the first game that you have a memory of ever playing?
Mail Order Monsters. It was on a floppy disk for the Commodore 64, but that game just blew my mind, because you basically, the conceit is that you send off for a monster in the mail. You basically get to pick its parts and pieces, like what kind of head it is, what kind of body it has, what kind of legs it has, what kind of damage it does. And then you go into this procedurally generated map and you fight these other procedurally generated monsters. It was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. It just blew my mind. I love the fact that it was customizable Lego pieces that you could mix and match, and then have these monsters go fight each other.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna boop you.
Did you play board games or card games with your family growing up?
Yeah, actually, I always hated Monopoly. Like, Monopoly would just, I don't know, there was just something about that. It would just seem like a slog. Like, I don't know, Monopoly just sucked, but my whole family is pretty competitive, in particular my mom. And so when I was really young, like maybe 8 or 9, we would always play Uno together. And she was just merciless. Like, she would just dog me into oblivion, like endless amounts of, the draw fours or whatever, and the skips and everything. I would just be like slowly, coming unglued, like, Mom, stop. And she would just, dog me with cards. But yeah, it's just, all of our family has always just played card games and, board games of various sorts. So it's definitely just kind of runs in the family, I think.
I hadn't played a board game since I was a child until I had a kid.
Oh yeah.
And like I went to a thrift store and I saw like an old Sorry game, and there's just something about like the layout of that board and the design of it. I felt like I was in like time travel,
transported back.
Yeah.
Sorry's a good one. You put that one there, right?
Yeah.
I think technically you boop yourself.
You boop yourself?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are we playing right now?
Oh, this game is literally called Boop. I've never played it before, but it's super cute. I love cats. We have 3 cats at home, so it's perfect. Like, games, cats, it's all me. So so I'm gonna be mean, and I'm gonna boop this one this way and this one.
I see how this works.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna dog you. It's Uno all over again.
Okay. Well, I want to.
So you're gonna boop these 2.
This one goes here,
and that one's diagonal.
And this one goes.
No, this way.
This way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you just help me out, because now I can go here, and I knock that one that way, and this one goes off the board. But those are 3 in a row.
Oh.
So
okay.
now
So
I
you get a cat.
I get a cat.
Yeah. What are the top 3 games that you're playing currently?
I still play a ton of video games. I went back and started playing Fallout 4 again. So I pretty much play that constantly. I'm just absorbed into it. I also play, so then you boop that cat that way. I'm super into, like, there's this genre of games called like crafting survival games, kind of like Minecraft. But there's one that I'm playing right now called Lynn's Island that's kind of cool. I like the art style is really cool, and it's just kind of like a chill game. But it's another one where like you're basically building a base and going and collecting items and crafting things and fighting in dungeons. The physical game that I'm playing, so my better half is not a huge game person, and she's definitely not like a D&D person, but I love Dungeons & Dragons. Like I said, I grew up playing that. My kids, I have 2 older kids, Sophie and Bradford, and they're also big nerds like me. I just recently got Jen to listen to this Dungeons & Dragons podcast called Dungeons and Daddies. And it's about, the premise is these 4 dads get sucked into the Dungeons and Dragons world, and they have to like rescue their sons. But it's just a very, very funny podcast, and I got her to listen to it, and I don't think she realized that games like that are all about improv. Like, it's all about like what's in your mind and like improv. Mm-hmm. So that got her really interested. So she actually bought me for Christmas, bought us for Christmas, like a Dungeons and Dragons starter set. I actually had her and Sophie and Bradford sit down, and we played like a little mini Dungeons and Dragons game together. It's called Trashkin, and you're basically like half human, half animals that eat out of the trash, and you go on a big adventure. So we were all just sitting around the table. Jen went and got a bunch of costume stuff that she had, so we all had like costumes on, and I think Jen was like a divorced fox, an alcoholic divorced fox. My son was a cigarette smoking pigeon, and my daughter was a rowdy goat. And like I just had them go through this whole premise thing. It was a ton of fun.
It's your turn. Okay. This is a good strategy. So I boop you this way. I can't boop the cat because the cat's bigger than me.
I see.
So I can start to line these up.
Okay. I'm going to go here and boop those.
Well, they have to go diagonal though. They would go. That one would actually go off the mat.
Okay, so
he's there.
He's here.
And then goes this way.
Here, yeah,
This
that,
was
and
going
then that
okay.
one goes that way.
Crap. Okay.
Okay, I'm about to piss you off again here. Sorry.
Oh no.
Boop.
Okay. The first game system that I really fell in love with is Nintendo NES.
Yeah.
And I loved almost every game I played until I got, I think it was Metal Gear, and I could not figure it out. Like I felt like it was broken or something. I didn't like. I was really young. I didn't understand it. I got so mad at this thing that I took it outside and smashed it because I just couldn't figure out how to play the damn game. What is there a game that you played that just makes you completely angry?
Yeah, I mean, I used to have that problem with my Nintendo as well, rage quitting. I remember one time, we grew up pretty poor, and we were poor for a while. Not only poor people can live in a trailer, but we lived in like a double wide, and the walls of a double wide are not that thick. They're kind of like just very thin sheet wood or whatever. I remember one time, I can't remember what game I was playing though, but I just remember having the controller and getting so mad and just throwing the controller across the living room, and it basically left a giant hole in the wall because the double wide trailer's walls were too thin, and it like made this huge notch out of it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get in so much trouble.
Those days are cool though. Like I remember going to like I don't know, KB Toys in the mall or something. You buy a game for a game system in a package. It had art on the box, and cool graphics, and you like open it up and play it. Like, I mean, games still have like cool art and stuff but it's not like an unboxing
packaging. Like everything's digital. Yeah. Okay, so are you a rule book reader and then you play, or do you jump in and play it to figure it out?
If it is a digital game, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
If it's like a board game like this, I'm a rule book reader.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like we're doing the best we can here with this game, but like there's not, like I also don't want to like waste my time by not understanding the rules. Like, how does this work? Whose turn is it?
I don't remember. To your point,
it's yours. I moved here and moved you there.
Okay, so I'm gonna move these two.
Well, when it as it relates to games, like when it like between the art of the games, like the way the aesthetic and the style, design, layout, art versus strategy and gameplay, which of those two is more important to you?
That's too hard of a question. I guess it boils down to like probably the gameplay, like because there can be some games that don't look great. It's both, man. Like some games are just beautiful, or the art style is so unique, like they're just beautiful to look at. I probably would, if they're not fun to play, I'm not going to play them, but I can definitely like appreciate them for their artistic value or their artistic merit. But yeah, like the game has to be fun. The graphics can be, not the best thing in the world. If the game's fun, the game's fun. I think, and that's whole Nintendo's thing. Like Nintendo has never had a system that can compete with like a PlayStation or Xbox level graphics, but people don't care because Nintendo games are so fun. Like Legend of Zelda is just an amazing game. So you can't boot my cat, but you can boot the other. Yeah.
But and then I just pick which direction?
Diagonal.
Oh, but then you get a cat.
Oh yeah, you just made a cat for me. Nice. I appreciate that.
In the office earlier, you were saying that maybe one thing you feel like you haven't done that you want to do is make a game. Like if you had like endless, whatever resources you need, an endless budget, what game would you make?
I would want to make a game that a team wants to make. Like I would want to have a team, and then for us to collectively, do something that we're all super excited about, rather than it just being, oh, I have this idea, I'm gonna go, enlist a team to do the thing that I want. I would much rather it be a collective idea that we all come up with together. And I mean, I could certainly like be the idea starter. I have in my personal Notion space, I have all these dedicated databases for different things. So I have like one for book reports. I have one for art project ideas, and I have one database that's just dedicated to game ideas, and I have, I don't know, countless things in there that would be good art idea starters. But I would want it to be like a collaborative effort. Because that's really, I think, what is the most fun part about any of it is just a group of people getting together and just having a good time, doing cool shit, making each other laugh, you know, just like surprising each other. Like to me, that's what it's all about. I mean, you're making my life easy because I think I'm paying more attention than you are.
Well, I have figured out a strategy
Okay.
here. Oh, damn it. I knew exactly where I was going to go.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Damn. Okay. All right. I still got to move. If I move here, I can boop this one. This
Oh
way,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh, that's perfect.
All right. But he's like on his head. I can move him like this.
Okay. Sorry, dude. That's booping off Matt. That's booping off the Matt.
Okay. So outside of playing games and working, like what else? What are the other things you do?
I mean, I guess all of my stuff is that I'm interested in tends to be kind of unified somewhat because I love to draw. It's like, so I still like, I have a sketchbook and do illustrations and stuff like that, but I also love creative coding. So that's very much like overlaps with work stuff, but it's what I love to do, you know, like making art with code is, I mean, if I had like a choice, like I could literally just sit down and just do it all day long, you know, all day, all night.
Talk a little bit more about that, you know, because just to explain what you mean by that.
So, I mean, creative coding can mean a lot of different things, but essentially in a nutshell, it's using code to make some form of art. Usually it's going to be something that's like motion or animated. But it's so expansive. Like you could consider like people who do visuals for for concerts and stuff like that. Usually there's some aspect of creative coding in that because you're using some software like Touch Designer, or maybe you're writing the code yourself to drive those visuals. And like just that creative aspect of like making this visualization that like can live and breathe with like the rhythm of the music, like that, it's just such an amazing feeling in my brain, at least whenever I'm doing that kind of stuff. And I also think that it's being able to see something in your head and then know how to make that concrete, or know how to like write lines of code to make that thing exist, is just, I don't know how to describe it. Like it's just this incredible journey that you go through in your mind, and then you see something on the screen. It's amazing.
So it's like code as a medium to create.
Yeah, it's definitely, exactly. It's no different than a paintbrush or a pencil or, you know, ink. It's just a different medium. Yeah.
So what are some examples of some of the things that you've made like that? And we'll link to at your website, show some of these.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to my Instagram, Stuff We Makes, that's where I post all my creative coding stuff. Or if you go to stuffwemakes.com, like all of that stuff is stuff that it's just, it's bespoke creative coding stuff. But like you'll see on that site, like it's a mixture of the site itself is in 3D. So I like go into Blender and model all those things. And then I bring them into something called 3JS and to do all the animation and the rendering and stuff like that. Other ones are more like the pattern engine, which actually you see in some of the Funsize branding and like on some of the Funsize site and stuff like that. All of that I would consider creative coding. It's just using code to express some idea that you have. Every now and then, like I want to do something with my hands and like physical piece of paper, because it like shifts your brain and forces you to think in a different way. That I think the thing I love about sketching and drawing is there's no Control-Z. When you make a mark with ink, and it's not exactly what you intend it to be, or if it's not perfect, you either have to start over or you have to figure out a way to work with that imperfection. And like that feeling, that process is also, it just feels so good to my brain because like there's no going back. Like you make that line and then you got to deal with it, and you got to keep going and figure out a way to make that happen. And you get something that's, you know, physical and tangible at the end of the process. And it's, you know, it's imperfect, but it's still this, you know, this thing that at one time it was just in your mind, but now like it's this thing that's on this piece of paper. It's that process is just, you know, I don't know. It's like mystical. It's magical to me. Oh yeah, we're playing a game, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go. All right, so I'm gonna go here. I can't push him into there, but I do boop you off and I boop me off. Okay.
So we're coworkers, but we're also friends. Like you and I hang out all the time. We talk about pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, like, what's something about you that you would say defines who you are that I may not know about?
Oh my gosh. That's a tough one to answer. I tend to be, so the way that I would answer that would be my childhood definitely has defined me. But I don't talk about it very much because it was like a messed up childhood. Like it was a deeply troubled, abusive childhood. So that definitely defines me because it's something that I've carried with me my entire life and I've been struggling with and working through my entire life. And I really honestly don't think it has been until maybe the past, 5 years that I feel like I've really finally understood it and come to terms with it. So that is a very big question because I think, how I grew up was just, it's not typical. So, and it's kind of hard to talk about that. Like you can't just, hey, nice to meet you, I'm Lee. I grew up in a horrible childhood and, we were dirt poor and all these bad things happened to me. You just can't have a conversation like that too easily.
The, maybe not so much about, and though it's the ingredient of it, like the way that you were raised, but more specifically about who you are, right? Like who you are as a creative person, as a designer, as a technologist. How have those things shaped who you become as a dad and the raise you kids? If there's any correlation between your career and what that meant for fatherhood.
That's an interesting question. I think because all of that other stuff overshadows everything and deeply affects how I relate to people, it always comes back to that. Like even raising kids and learning how to relate to my kids and how to even be a dad or a human being to my kids was just completely, it's always been that struggle of reconciling how I grew up to be a good dad for my kids. So all of this other stuff has kind of just been like ancillary or on the back burner. I mean, on the positive side, I guess the one thing is I'm usually in most school settings and stuff like that, I'm usually probably the coolest parent there. Probably. I think my kids enjoy the fact that, I have a cool job and, all of their friends are like, oh, your dad's so cool. So, that's kind of a nice little ego pat on the back. So, yeah, I guess in that way, like I expose them to things that they probably wouldn't necessarily be exposed to. And I love, oh shit, that's a whole other thing I haven't even talked about is how much I love music and how I used to be a DJ. So like I've always exposed them to, cool music and, they're amazing, human beings in their own right. So we luckily we get along because we kind of simpatico that way.
When was the last time you did a DJ set?
So probably when I was a DJ, like a long time ago, but me and my buddies, I have a very close friend who is a DJ, who's still a DJ in Houston. The three of us still make mixes for each other. So he DJs, but we aren't DJ. I haven't DJ'd, but I have like, I'll get a collection of songs that I want to turn into a mix. We'll all go have we call it a dirtbag weekend because we're just three old dirtbags, but we'll get together, hang out over the weekend. We'll listen to each other's mixes and critique it. And, so we still do stuff like that.
Would have any of your interests, you think, rubbed off on your kids? I mean, your son's into music.
Yeah,
your daughter's in design. Like, how do you think that's influenced by you, or do you think that they reach those conclusions on their?
I guess it's probably a mixture of maybe just the heredity aspect of it, but I definitely think like their exposure to what I do has influenced them because Bradford is definitely very much into beat making now. And goes in like he far surpasses me in his knowledge of like where samples come from and how beats are constructed. And yeah, Sophie is also very much like she's not actively in the design industry, but her degree is in conversational AI and writing and stuff like that. So I would say that there's some influence there. And Jen, my better half, who's also a designer in an AI, has also been an amazing influence on them as well.
Sounds so awesome. It sounds like you are able to talk about all the things or a lot of the things that you enjoy with your whole family.
Yeah. I feel very, lucky and grateful that we have that commonality, because it's hard not to have any commonality. It's hard to have like a good, strong connection with somebody if you're not on the same page about, something. But yeah, luckily we all hang out pretty good together.
You're not an egotistical person at all. In fact, you're one of the least egotistical people that I know. But if you could take a moment to be a little bit egotistical, out of all the things that you have done or that you do or will do, like what would you like to be known for?
I think I would like to be known for being a good dad.
That's a really badass answer, right?
Being able to like have that relationship with this other human being that's your kid, and you never stop being a dad, you never stop being a mom, you never stop being a parent. It never goes away till the day you die. Like if you have a kid, like you're that person's parent. So, I don't know, to me that if I get one thing right, I hope it's that.
What was the first alcoholic drink that you ever had in your life?
Some shitty beer, like probably like a Coors or something like that. I remember I am not a sports person. I was horrible at sports, but my parents would make me try a sport, at least try it to see if I liked it or not. So when I was very young, probably like maybe 7 or 8 or 9, like I was doing soccer, and like I think it was at the end of the season, like one of the parents had a big party at their house, and one of the kids went and snuck like a beer out of the dad's cooler or something, and we snuck off, and opened it up, and it tasted horrible.
I'll never forget the first thing that I ever drank that was alcoholic was Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill.
Oh damn!
And
that's an introduction to alcohol.
it was at the playground by the park that I grew up in, and someone brought it. It was warm. It was
God. Yeah.
But beer though, the first time I tried beer, I was like, this is disgusting. Like who wants to drink this shit?
Yeah.
But man, I don't know.
And then what is it? Like somehow you just press on. And then something switches and you're like, oh yeah, this is amazing.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Central Texas, so I'm a native Texan. So Waco, there's Dallas, there's Austin, and there's Waco's right in the middle, which I guess used to be known for the Branch Davidians, even though that didn't happen in Waco. But now I think it's known for the Gaines or whatever, the silos. Yeah. So if you drive 20 minutes south of that, there's this little town called Lorena. That's where I went to school, because that was the closest school. But 20 minutes out further, just out in the middle of nowhere in a farming community called Levi, that's where I grew up. Okay. So, yeah.
Well, like how far was your closest neighbor, just for some?
I mean, you could walk, but it was a farming community. So you had houses spread out by land and stuff like that. Yeah.
What kind of stuff did you do for fun as a kid? For enjoyment?
My sources of fun were, we had a giant sand pile. I think I mentioned, like, I've always had like an active imagination. I would just spend hours out in the sand pile, just constructing worlds, digging up, shaping buildings and stuff. I had a couple of stepbrothers. We lived on like 33 acres, and we would go off like on adventures. Like we would find sticks and they would pretend that they were swords and spears and stuff, and we would go off on adventures into the, you know, into the forest or whatever. We'd get into dirt clod fights. So my dad was a live off the land guy. He was like, tried to be totally self-sufficient. So we had our own well for water. We raised our own animals and had an orchard, had our garden. Wow. So yeah, we had a lot of land. So we would like get into like once you harvest your crops or whatever, like you still have the fields, but they get dried out. And so they make for these perfect dirt clods. You just pick them up, you just start chucking them at each other, and you know, just stuff like that poor people do.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, but also like stuff that we did before technology,
that's
right?
True. That's true. Yeah,
you know, you have to use your imagination.
You yeah.
Like, you know, like back to the kid stuff. One of the most fascinating things to me having a kid was relearning how to use my imagination, and to a point where I realized, oh shit, like this is actually fun to pretend. Like,
yeah.
But then, like, you know, my son, he spends all his time on technology. And, you know, he's on YouTube. He knows what's real and what's not, right? Like, and I'll be like, well, let's pretend we're doing something. He's like, that's not real, right? It's like, no, it's like, just use your just pretend, you know, like that's okay. It's good for your brain.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, like, especially watching y'all with Julian, because we grew up with pre-technology. My kids grew up with the transition into technology. So they grew up as like screens where it became like the norm. So they started off not having screens, but then they grew up into them. And like Julian is like screen first kid, you know. It's just interesting seeing how that technology affects, you know, how we evolve as human beings.
What is your earliest memory of having an aspiration of like what you want to become when you grew up? Like,
that's a really good question. I had a best friend in, I want to say it was probably around 5th or 6th grade, who introduced me to comic books. And I'd always been a drawer my whole life. Like, some of my earliest memories are of drawing. And I was always getting in trouble for messing up my books by drawing all over them. But my friend introduced me to comic books, and I would go over to his house for the weekend, or he would come over to my house for the weekend. We would spend the entire time just drawing comic books and like making up characters and stuff. So for the longest, that was I think the first time when I could concretely say, oh, I want to be a comic book artist when I grow up. Like, this is a thing that I love so much, I want to do it when I grow up.
Wow, that's cool. So like growing up out there in the country, like what were the schools like? Was there art programs? And
it's real interesting because I think I knew from probably when I was 4 years old that this is not for me. Like, growing up out in the middle of nowhere, I deeply appreciate it now, but at the time I hated it. Like, everything about it sucked. I hated being poor. I hated, we just lived in an old farmhouse. So for the longest time, like, I had a tarp was one of the walls in my room, but there were spiders everywhere. Like, I was constantly being eaten by bugs and mosquitoes, and with my dad being live off the land, like, you're just working all the time. And I was like, this sucks.
Damn.
And then, yes, the school was a small Central Texas school. So the only thing that mattered was football. If you were not athletic and you didn't like football, then you might as well not have existed.
And you didn't like sports, so you
hated sports.
Not a popular kid in the school?
I was not, I did not. And it was a small school. So yeah, I just knew it was not for me.
Yeah.
I was the kid, so we did have an art class, but it's not like any sort of art class that you would think of if you went to a larger school. It was just like, oh, here's the place that we can put these, people that don't fit in. Like, just go make them do some painting for a while. But the thing that probably saved me was, like, I kind of got into speech and drama with some friends that were a couple of years older than me. And I really liked theater, and I liked art and stuff like that. But where I'm going with this is, for the longest time, I wore, this was before goth. So like The Cure was goth before goth was, you know, a thing. But I was super into like wearing black clothes and a trench coat. And for the longest time, most of the people when I was in high school, most of the people at school thought I was a Satanist. And then my last year, my senior year, for the school play, we did the play Cain and Abel, and I got cast as Satan. So I got to play Satan.
Nice.
it was just like a good thing.
But it was probably like a no-brainer. Give it to the Satan. Give it to the Satan kid.
Yeah. But yeah, like I think my graduating class was, I want to say 36 people.
Oh, damn.
And most of them
Yeah.
I went all 12 years of school with.
Yeah.
So
like 5th or 6th grade, I want to be a comic book artist. You know, then a kid around, I don't know, 16, 17 or so, maybe 18, when they're in, you know, junior or senior, we're encouraged to figure out what we want to do, right?
yeah.
What did you want? What was your plan? Like, what was your career plan at that age? Like, when you were still in high school, what were you planning on doing?
Well, without getting too dark, I had no plan. Like that was like a particularly tough time in my life. I would say that I was just completely lost. Probably had a drug addiction, but I mentioned, you know, I had like a very rough childhood, and my dad died, I think my freshman year, and it like everything in my life just kind of fell apart. And so I was very lost. I didn't have any career aspirations or career goals. Like was just more interested in just trying to not exist, you know? And, but the way that ties into where I am now is I'm kind of like a slow learner and a late starter. So I didn't get my shit together enough and figure out that I wanted to do something with my life until I was a little bit older. So I didn't graduate from college until 2000. And I was already, you know, way older than everybody else that I was going to college with. And by that time, I already had, you know, I was already had a kid. So my experience in college was much different than when I entered into the workforce. When I joined Frog, I was, you know, 10 years older than the people that were closest to me. So I've always been kind of the oldest person in this industry, you know, no matter where I've worked, just by the fact that I was kind of a slow starter. So I didn't really have any career aspirations at that time. But it wasn't until, I mean, to be honest, it wasn't until I had 3 jobs, no education, and like a kid that I was trying to take care of, that I was like, you know what? I should probably change. This kind of sucks. I think I might want to make something myself. But that was enough motivation for me to then go to college and try to figure something out. And then when I got there, I was like, oh shit, this is really cool. Like, physics is awesome. Math is awesome. History is awesome, biology is awesome, and I'm not as stupid as I thought I was. And then I just naturally, I felt like it was like going from being in a desert to like being in an oasis or something, and like it just really energized me. And that's where I discovered like computer science. I had taken some coding classes in high school and had been around computers a lot, but I never really knew how they worked or anything. But once I discovered that computer science was a thing, I was just all in. I was like, oh, this is super cool.
What year was that?
So if I graduated in 2000, 4 years back, like, what was that, 98?
Okay, very early days, right? So computer science, you're like, oh, computers are cool. What did that mean to you in terms of like what you would do with that?
So I was that at that point, I think I was like a little bit more career minded. I was thinking about, okay, how do I make money to support myself and my family? And I knew that I was super, super interested in, at the time it was called atomic physics, but like particle physics, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, stuff like that. But the only thing that I saw that was available would be like going into like research and stuff like that. And I wanted to do something that would make money. So I just did like a little research and saw that like computer scientists did pretty good. So I kind of just, kind of gravitated and went into that direction. And like I was mentioning earlier, once I started to understand what programming was, I realized that in my brain, it was the same thing as like drawing a picture. it was just like an artistic expression, just using a different medium.
It was pretty similar for me. Like, okay, I'm a good artist, but I kind of knew that I would not probably make a lot of money if I just focused purely on art.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what happens if you mix art and technology? Maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you. Well, it doesn't sound like it. Me, I never wanted to use a computer at all. Like I was like, I used to make fun of people. I don't want a job working on a computer. Be creative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh shit, like everything is going to be on a computer.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to use computers. Like first computer I ever used was probably 1997, 1998, I think is when I had
like really, yeah.
I mean, I guess I had like computers in high school, but it was for a specific purpose, like like one program, like architectural drafting.
Yeah.
Never really navigated a browser or anything like that.
Yeah.
Let's make this about you, but I'm curious to see what the overlap is. When did you make the connection with more in design? Like, oh, this is interesting, right? To like put an interface or an experience on top of code that other people would use.
That's a good question. When I got recruited by Capgemini when I graduated college, and the job I got recruited into was basically like a back-end engineer. So it was all code, and it was just basically taking this data from this company and this data from this company and figuring out how to munge it together. And it was like, it wasn't great. But it was cool. It was my first job, and I was doing what I was trained to do. Then 9/11 happened, and the economy tanked, and I got laid off. But then I got rehired at Texas Farm Insurance, and they were basically trying to modernize their process for agents out in the field going and doing claims and stuff like that. So I got to basically build the application that they would use. And that was the first time that I was really thinking about how does the data express itself to the user. And at this time nothing existed in terms of like UX best practices, or like interaction design was not even a word. Like none of that stuff really existed. So, but I knew that there was just something there. Like you could make this connection between working with the agents in real time, listening to what their experience was like out in the field, and why something was or was not working with the software. And so I don't know, it's like you intuitively start to realize, oh, there's this problem, this thing that you have to solve, so that like the computer needs to do the stuff that the computer is good at, and then the human has to do the stuff that the human's good at. Like it's not the human's job to understand how a computer works. Like it's you design something so that you hide away all the hard, complex computer stuff, so that the user can just focus on the thing that they need to get done. And I think that's where it really started to click for me. But the issue I ran into was no one else there really cared, and that culture there was not a good fit for me. And I felt like, oh man, like why did I work so hard? Like I'm coming to work every day, and I feel like my soul is, slowly shrinking into nothing. Like I have to change this. And that's where I started to explore, how do I get back into doing things that connect with my artistic background. And I was just, doing research, saw that there's this design agency, Frog, in Austin, that's, looking for somebody who knows how to write code. And I, in a million years, I was like, well, I mean, I'm never going to get hired, but I'm at least going to try. Like, what the hell? What do I have to lose? And then that changed everything.
I have an obsession with that era, and I have a struggle with it, because the artist in me loved the act of creating something purely artistic and creative that competes with things like usability, patterns and stuff like that, right? Like I miss the old days when like every website, everything was like completely unique, where now it's more prescriptive. Oh, this pattern works better for that. I don't, but things are more accessible and usable, but it's that those days will never happen again, right? Do you think that if the iPhone hadn't been invented, which basically killed Flash. It was one of the many reasons why it got killed. Do you think that eventually people would have figured out how to make it accessible? And
no, there were too many problems with its fundamentally with like where it came from and what it was created for, and it was being used for things that it just was not designed to do, and there was just no way to scale that into mass consumption and enterprise usage because of the security constraints. This would have been doomed. It was doomed because it was a thing of its era, and that's what it was. That's what it was for.
Probably wasn't really intended to do things like websites. Probably intended to do more like training or menu design or maybe games
and The interesting thing about that though is like technology and design. It's like fashion. Like things come into vogue and go out of vogue, and then they'll come back. Somebody will think they've invented something new, and it's just a rehash of there was a period in the 70s when bell bottoms were awesome, and then they sucked. And then in the 90s, bell bottoms came back hard, and they're amazing. And then they sucked again. But now I see people wearing bell bottoms again.
But they still suck.
But design is fashion like that.
Yeah.
Like old trends just get revisited and revitalized. That's one of the cool things that I love about this industry. But to your point, I think that's the spectrum where you've got the need for sort of self-expression and creativity, and then the need to appeal to as many people as possible. And the more you skew to the need to appeal to as many people as possible, the more you start to systematize and templatize and turn everything into just you push a button and it extrudes a shape for you. Like it's less about human expression and more just about wash, rinse, repeat for these patterns so that you can just crank something out and make money. And I think that's like, if you become a designer in this era, that's kind of all you know. Like you've come into the era of, oh, I just go copy this template from the Figma community and I'm good to go. And like it removes your critical thinking skills from the process. It removes your ability to think about something upstream from something that's already been put together for you. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's some sort of cyclical thing that happens where designers revolt against that and rediscover, being creative. I'm not saying that designers today aren't creative, because they are massively creative, but they've given a set of tools and a context that unless you have never experienced the outside of that context, you just don't know.
It's hard. Designers are creative, I agree, but because of the way things have gone and tooling, certain percentage of creativity has been removed from the equation.
Yeah. Or they become more like things that seem so normal and natural to us, like sketching things out on a piece of paper, and certain processes are seen as more antiquated and they're not necessary. And to a certain degree, that's true. Like, yeah, you could still go use a Gutenberg printing press if you wanted to. You could still go cut masks using acetone, if you wanted to, but why? Because it's way easier to use the technology that exists today. And maybe there's a certain aspect of that in our processes as designers and creatives. But I don't know, for me, there's still something nice about having, picking up a book and reading it, or drawing something on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Close to the time that you had started Big Bomb, I had started another company with a friend of mine.
Is that Argyle?
Yeah, they're in Argyle. And we did all of our wireframes on grid paper. Mm-hmm. We did for a while, right? And we would, we would draw everything out, basically storyboard all the mobile design stuff. We would use Fujitsu scanners, and we'd scan it in and send it, right? Because like we weren't using Dropbox or anything, and there wasn't like conferencing tools where you could, present your work. And it was a way that me and my colleague could do design work together remotely. I was in New York and he was in Dallas, so we'd use sketches and scan, back and forth. The clients are like, that's all they wanted. They wanted this like no, like we were like, we're gonna just switch to doing like, you know, some other UX tool to digital tool. They're like, no, we want the sketches. And we're like, what? You want the sketches? Like, do you realize like how long it'll take? Because back to the other point, you mess up, you got to redo it, right?
Yeah.
But people love that shit. I don't know what it is. It's like,
it's human.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all human beings. Like, we're all millions of years of evolution. Like, we are social creatures that need real life physical interactions and, you know, exchanges of emotions and body language and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, you know, it's built into who we are as creatures on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about that, maybe a higher value put on it because it's a human-made artifact, you know.
I will never forget the day. So Alamo Draught House, RIP. You know, now that Paramount bought them, but
Paramount bought them?
Yeah.
Oh,
I will never forget the day I went into an Alamo Draught House and they switched over to a digital system. Like, for the longest time, Alamo Draught House, you go in there, you have a conversation with somebody and they take your order and they're like writing it down on a piece of paper. And the day that I went in there and they were staring at a screen like this, I was like, God damn. Like, there was something, I can totally understand the need for progress. I can understand why it makes things infinitely better in terms of process and profit and all that kind of stuff. But there's just something, you know, you just lose something in that process because you're no longer talking to a human being like this. You're talking to a human being like this. I'm talking to you and asking you a question, but here's where I'm looking.
Yeah.
You know,
it's nowhere near the same. Yeah. It's like, it's energy that you can feel too.
In short, we have basically ruined the world. Like, we as designers have just, you know, made things terrible.
It's true. I mean, like, there's been a lot of designers have created a lot of good in the world, but we've also created a lot of things that have like really hurting humanity, you know?
Yeah. I say that tongue in cheek because it's just inevitable. Yeah. You can't, not designers, anyone, you cannot exist in this world without having positive and negative impacts on it. That's just called living in the universe. Now the question is it possible, will it ever be possible to actually solve that problem of recreating or re-enabling human connection in a digital experience? Like, that's the problem. Like I just said, oh, now the moment I saw my waiter looking here instead of talking to me, I was like, fuck this. But okay, that's the problem. Is there some way to solve that? Like, is there a way to actually recapture that with design and technology? I mean, I don't know. I'm definitely asking that question. Like, we certainly have not solved it. I mean, if you had the option between talking here or me going in my house and you going to house and us talking on Zoom, which would you pick? You know, like, trying to have a meeting over Zoom is not fun. So I don't think we're there yet. We obviously have not solved it, but I'm just wondering, can we? Is that a solvable thing? Or is it just literally diametrically opposed? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
We probably got a little bit of old man syndrome here too, because context matters, right? Like, if you know, like, if kids have in the current generation,
all they've ever known
is that, then it's not necessarily a bad thing. But they just don't. They've never experienced.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, that's a really good point.
You know, they've never experienced an interaction in a different way. You know, but it is kind of a shame, I guess.
Oh man, that's a really good thing. I had not thought about that.
I don't know.
So I don't need to worry about it because the kids aren't going to know one way or the other.
What is the worst thing that you've ever designed?
Man, that's a rolling thing. Like, every year, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. The worst thing I ever designed. I guess the thing that comes to mind is, so when I was working at the Texas Farm Insurance, I was doing freelancing stuff with Flash because that was the thing I really loved, was making stuff. And I was contracting with the state a guy associated with the state fair to do games, like kiosk games at the state fair that would teach about dairy and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made this one game for him that was kind of like a Monopoly style game where you were earning cotton or something like that, and you would answer questions to earn cotton. And I thought, at the time, man, I did a really good job on this game. Like, this looks really good. And then I remember at some time later, like going and finding these old files of mine and looking at the graphics, and it was just like a eye chart, man. It was just like an eyesore, and I was like, holy shit! Like, how did I ever think this looked good? It was just like getting punched in the face with pixels. It was terrible.
I don't know. Tell me if this has ever happened to you. And it might just be because of like where I went to school that came out of this other like animation and graphic design programs. But the digital files were not the value. We were taught to print out our work on boards, even though they were websites. And
that was a big thing that was a big thing at Frog. even when I was at Duo, the cybersecurity company, just a few years back, like it was a big deal to get the giant blackboards, print everything out. And
I thought that was ridiculous. I won't say the name of the company just because, you know, we can keep company names out of it. But the first job that I was interviewing for in Austin, they asked me like, what is your favorite typeface? And I mean, granted, I understand now why they asked that. It was a deeper question about design. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't trained as a designer classically. Yeah. I was like, whatever font I can use in a website. Dana, Arial, Times New Roman.
I mean, that is a very good answer. It's not a capital D design answer, but it's a pretty good answer.
I was like, we're talking about a web design job here, right? Like, what typefaces can I use on the internet right now?
That's pretty good.
And I remember my first interviews out of school, they were like, they wanted like going to a interview, and they wanted it like. So one company is like, well, where's your portfolio? And I was like, my stuff is on the internet. They're like, oh, we were hoping to like go there. I was like, you want me to print out 320 or 640 by 480? Like,
but that kind of goes back to what we were saying is it's like, maybe it's like it's a human thing, you know, like it's a human connection thing.
This may be the biggest thing I think for me. And what I loved about this industry is not just being creative and solving business problems, but doing it with people.
Yeah.
And since the pandemic, that's changed, right? It's changed industry-wide. We're in a global economy. People can hire all around the world. We have tools and technology to enable that. Figma. We no longer have to send a courier with our files, right? But also, like, seems to be like a very mixed bag on whether or not people want to come together to create things. Mm-hmm. To me, that changes how I feel about the work.
Yeah.
Because without that human connection in doing the work, well, I also don't make things anymore. But like, if that is the way the industry is going, then it becomes something lesser, you know, like more transactional and less, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or is it like, are the tools that it have now like still enable?
Well, I mean, like you said before about like old man syndrome, for people who came into this during the pandemic, maybe it's just the normal. Like maybe it's just like, oh, this is just how you do it, and that's okay. I don't know. I don't know that I agree with that hypothesis, because we're still humans at the end of the day. Like you still have relationships with people. When you go home, you don't interact with Natalie and Julian through a screen. Like you together and you're talking and you're looking at each other face to face. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that like just because that's all you know that somehow obviates the fact that you're a human being. I think we're still humans, and that's always going to be the case. And I can remember when the first project we did post-pandemic, where we did our travel to San Diego. It was a little awkward at first because no one was used to doing something in person, but it was just palpably, tangibly different than conducting a kickoff meeting with a client over Zoom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I just I just think that's you can't replace being human.
Yeah.
But I think that's the one thing that I discovered that I really like about doing a discovery call with a client is, yes, the end goal is to get their money and to give them a product, you know, to do design with them, to land a project. But really what the discovery call is about is like, do we like each other as human beings? Like, how do we figure out how to bridge the gap of, I've never met you before, I know nothing about you as a human being. Are you a good person? Are you a bad person? Like, there's just this gulf of unknown information that you're trying to rapidly close that gap through a conversation. Like, to me, that's just, it's just totally fascinating because, like, you know, like I've mentioned, like I'm toward the end of my career as a designer, and I'm like meeting people who are at the beginning of their career as a designer or as a, like, you know, a leader in another company. And like I look at this person and I'm like, oh man, like you're so young, like you're such a kid. How are we going to have something in common? And you're in real time. Like, you have to have this conversation to figure that shit out. It's just fascinating to me.
I never thought of it that way. It's kind of like speed dating, right?
Yeah.
Because like,
do we like each other?
Yeah.
Do I like you enough to give you my money? Do I like you enough to want to deal with like a client, you know, agency relationship and make something for you?
yeah, man, that's really interesting. Well, I have one last question for you. It's probably going to be it's a subjective one, but you've worked across design technology, engineering, over 20 years, various positions.
Not over, at 20.
At 20?
I'm not that old yet.
In terms, if you had to pick one thing that designers are most responsible for, like what would it be? Like, for example, is it to push the limits? Is it to change the world? Is it to make clients money? Is it to make users happy? Right? Like, do you have an idea of what you think the most important thing for a designer in our industry of like doing product design?
That's a good question. And I alluded to this in one of our all hands. I view, at its core, I view design as problem solving. It doesn't matter if you're doing visual design or interaction design or doing research. You have to understand that it's not about that thing that you're doing. It's not about what something looks like on a screen. It's about, again, human connection. Like there's one human that's trying to provide something to another human being, and there's another human being who needs to get something done. And you have to figure out how to translate that. So at its core, design is about problem solving. It's about understanding this person and what is the commonality between those two. It just so happens that we live in like everything we do is with computers, it's digital. So we tend to solve those problems or think in the context of a screen and, you know, pixels and code. But at the core, if you consider yourself a problem solver, you future-proof yourself from becoming a dinosaur. If you only think of yourself as, oh, I'm just like an expert at Figma and pulling in, you know, design system templates and getting all the tokens set up, your job could be gone in a month because that can be turned into a push of a button. Mm-hmm. It's entirely possible that, you know, you can be replaced as a human being because machine can solve problems and do critical thinking way better. But if that's the case, we're all in that same boat and it doesn't matter. Like, we're all dinosaurs. But for designers, if you can take a step back from what you do on a daily basis and instead think of yourself as a problem solver, I feel like that's like probably the most critical thing, because not only do you help yourself, but then you truly help your clients and your fellow designers.
That's huge, right? Because the machines will never be able to have human empathy to help another human that's trying to help another human that's trying to help another human that's trying to help a bunch of humans, right?
Yeah, at least not with the way that AI works right now.
I love that. Dude, I appreciate you hanging out all day. I don't want to keep you. We can go inside in the AC if you want. and get out of the heat.
Let's have like 3 more beers in 100 degree weather. That'll be awesome.
Let's do it.
I appreciate you wanting to talk to me. I love it. This is really great.
I love hanging out with you. We
Yeah.
hang out.
I know we said this.
Yeah.
You're one of my favorite people to hang out and drink beer with. So
You're one of my
No
favorite people
problems.
too.
Funsize.com!